Hello and welcome. I am thrilled to introduce you to my favorite person in the world, Devin Galladay. He is the smartest, most resourceful, most honest, and most charming human being I have ever met. And years ago, when he had left his cushy job that he couldn't stand, but hadn't left his love for travel and the money was drying up and he still wanted to travel. For most people, that would stop them. And this is one of the things that really let me know early on that Devin is different, because when he didn't have the money to travel, he found a new way to travel like a rock star and travel for free. And he is a pioneer in this. He was doing this long before so many other people started trying to copy what he's doing. So what he's going to be teaching you is stuff you're not going to learn anywhere else, because he invented it. And honestly, for those of you who know, we're married. Not just married, but we're marrying each other 100 times in 100 countries. And doing it this way with Devin, we didn't spend the money that people usually spend on a wedding or on travel. And that left us all this extra money to buy a house and keep getting married and keep traveling. And because of what I learned from my husband, I get benefits. I'm traveling first class to Bali and back on my next retreat for $87. Does that sound interesting to you? You are going to love what Devin is going to be teaching you. He is the editor-in-chief of In the Know Traveler and 5 other online travel magazines. He's been doing this work that he'll be giving you his secrets. He's been doing this for 16 years now. So get out your pens, turn on your listening ears, and enjoy the ride. Devin, over to you.
This is Devin with In the Know Traveler. Tanya, hey, this is good to see you today. This is, you know what? I'm not going to get used to that. I'm not going to get used to my wife introducing me like that. I'm not going to get used to the accolades. All that stuff is kind of weird and foreign for me. It's true, but it's weird and foreign for me because I just keep thinking I do things that I love and good things come of it. So if you are new, welcome. If you have seen me before, welcome. Good to see you again. I'm glad to have you, Tanya, and everybody else in the room today. This should be a lot of fun. We are talking about my favorite subject, which is travel. And as I said before, my name is Devin Galladay, and for the last 12 years, I've been the editor-in-chief of In the Know Traveler, which is an online travel magazine. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a bit, but we have a truckload of stuff to cover. And I imagine the vast majority of you are here to learn about free travel, and you want to travel more and you want to save more money. I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that. I'm also going to teach you how to work within the industry of travel. There's actually a huge industry, and this is going to be something that I guarantee you can take out into the universe if you put forth a little bit of effort. I'm going to be giving you some really practical tips that hopefully, if you haven't done so yet, make sure that you have out a notepad or something like that that will hopefully get you sort of like moving in the right direction. There will be replays. My guess is if you're not watching this live, you're watching the replay. Let's see. David, time for me to step up to the plate. Yeah, totally. You should absolutely step up to the plate. I'm going to explain why, because part of this free travel thing is kind of like, I guarantee you there's going to be a point in our conversation where you're going to say something like, why are you telling us this? This is sort of like, kind of like shooting the golden goose, if you will, if you spread this information too much. The truth of the matter is I'm actually going to be doing the opposite. What the travel industry needs is more smart people who know how to work within its universe So not only do you get benefits, they get benefits too, because it's sort of like an odd time in the travel universe, and I want you to know all about this. Let's see. Good. Let's see. Can you hear me? I'm having audio on this end, Brandy. I'm hoping you're finding it. If anybody's having audio problems, you may want to log out and then log back in. And I wish you success. And remember, get some notes out, have some fun. I'm going to tell you some stories. I'm going to give a little bit of history about myself. And Andrea, yay, and Christina, yay. So glad to have you here. Hey, Desiree, this is kind of crazy. Good, I'm glad that some people are hearing me and seeing me. It might just be an audio issue on one of your ends. So hang tight with me. We're going to talk a lot about travel. We're going to talk even a little bit about love. And more importantly, by the end of this, you're going to understand how it is that I've gotten free trips for the last 16 years. And this is like a no joke kind of thing. I have traveled for free on media trips, one-on-one trips for the last 16 years. Most trips fall into the $5,000 to $10,000 range. Because they are all about one-of-a-kind travel. It's always fine dining. It's always great, accommodations, 5-star accommodations, Michelin star restaurants, and really one-of-a-kind travel experiences. So from top to bottom, they're really expensive to travel the way that I do. But the good news is that I'm going to offer you how you can do this. Like, I guarantee you, by the end of this, just hang tight with me. I've got a bunch, like a whole slew of notes and tips. So, and like I said, over the last 16 years, I have probably gone on somewhere between, the low ballpark, I haven't sat down and counted them all, but probably about 85 trips. And my low end figure is probably in the neighborhood of $400,000 worth of free travel. I've personally been to 83 countries and counting. I've just recently been offered trips to Santa Fe, New Mexico, the Dominican Republic, and Argentina. And it's really very, very cool. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. And definitely by the end of this, not only am I going to tell you how to do this, I'm also going to tell you by the end of this session, I'm going to tell you how to get free airline tickets that are going to cost you, they're going to cost you next to nothing, as my wife had discussed a little bit earlier. Yeah, that's so weird that she announced me like that. I'm incredibly grateful. My heart skips a beat. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is why you think you can't. Yes. Tanya, my wife got her, I think she got first class tickets to Bali and back. Some of you might know my wife, and she does a number of retreats, but one of them she does is to Bali. It's an incredible event. So the first thing that people are going to that's going to come to their minds is all the reasons why this is impossible, that they can't do it, they're uncomfortable doing it, and it's going to be weird and terrible or some other thing. Don't worry about any of that. I promise you, this is standard industry stuff that I'm giving you. I'm not going to be giving you anything weird or underhanded. I'm actually going to teach you how to utilize a system that has been in place for 50 years and to just take advantage of it. And I mean, not in a bad way. I'm just saying, do what it's there for, is to mostly offer value. So what I want you to understand with me, and remember, this can get a little technical in the beginning, but understand we're working on this together. I'm going to answer as many questions that I can. As a matter of fact, some people have written in questions, so I will answer those. But the primary principle that I want you to understand is that value is the same as leverage. I'm hoping you guys are seeing that clearly and it's not coming in backwards to you. But this is the most important ideal, is that value equals leverage. And this is how we get airfare, and this is how I get free trips, and this is how I do all the stuff that we talk about. So again, this value is the stuff that I provide to tourism boards and to airlines and all kinds of the tourism industry. And that's how I get to go and do all the incredible, fantastic things I end up doing. Does this sound pretty cool to you? It totally good, clear, and not backwards. Thank you, Felipe. So the idea here is that ultimately you're going to be making a trade. And the trade is you're going to be able to provide value to the different tourism boards, PR firms, magazine editors, and different venues that have the access to trips, and you will be providing value for it. Good. I'm so glad that we've got some love-its on this end. So what you're going to do is, oh yeah, we're ready to dive in. I'm working off of cards here. This is like a lot of material, and I want to make sure that it all gets put in a ball. And if you haven't figured it out, I am not like, there are people that are spit and polish and beautiful and like right down the line and have all this stuff memorized. I don't. Like, at the end of the day, I'm doing this because I love travel. I think everybody should travel. I think we're supposed to know each other better, and there's no better way than learning about somebody else's culture and understanding of the world than by meeting them in their home. And that's kind of ultimately sort of like my underhanded little sneaky goal. I want you guys to go out and travel and see the world and explore it and dive in it and feel comfortable and be able to do it with a minimum of expense and hassles and all that other kind of stuff. Yes, amen, Andrea. By the way, as I said before, this is not sort of like a hobo travel kind of thing. Like, what you will do, like if you were to type in free travel, or go to YouTube and type in free travel into a video, you're probably going to get something that is going to be like, sleep on somebody's couch, dive in a dumpster and eat for free, or people will throw out food from a restaurant and you should eat from their plates. And there's going to give you a bunch of weird things, or teach school in Malaysia. By the way, all those things are fine. And honestly, I've done much of them because my heart is dedicated to travel, because I really have a desire. Like I said, we're supposed to know each other. But we're not talking about that kind of travel. Again, we're talking about high-end luxury trips, one-of-a-kind stuff, and it opens doors like crazy. So let me first start telling you how I got started. I was like a very, like I think my GPA from high school was like 2 something like that, like terrible. I didn't study, I didn't do the right things, and I definitely did not have a writing degree. In fact, I was told by my third grade teacher, take a lot of wood shop classes because you're not going to be a writer. And so she was wrong, but for years I believed her. And, you know, I didn't go to school, I didn't do anything. I came out of high school, I worked with my father, I built things with all of those woodshop classes that I ended up taking. And so that's kind of like a thing that I love. But what had happened was I had written an article, like on a dare. Matter of fact, I went backpacking in Iceland, and I had a spectacular time. I had a sleeping bag. I slept in everywhere. I slept outside and in the street, and I had a fantastic time. But it was not, you know, as I'm getting older, this is becoming less of an interesting thing to do. But I met a woman, one woman in Iceland, who quite literally wrote me not often, but like, you know, every month or so we would exchange a letter. And let's see, will we have a replay? Yes, we totally will. So what had happened was she would write me these letters, and at the bottom of every letter, she was a web designer. She would give me like 6 URLs of all of these things that she was doing, and it was amazing. And at some point, because I had nothing going on in my life, and I really wasn't making any money, I wrote this woman, and I said, you know, I wrote her a short story. I didn't even mean to think about it, but I wanted to give her something that was like a little bit beyond sort of like, oh, I'm fine, thanks. And so she, after reading the short story, she wrote me back and she goes, hey, listen, we have this, we're putting out a book. This was right around 9/11. She goes, we're putting out a book. Why don't you submit something? I can't guarantee you it'll get published, but I'll guarantee that it gets read. And so she said, like, here's the link. And so I read the link, and I promised myself that I was going to write a story no matter what Mrs. Jones told me about myself. So I turned it in an article, and 3 months later, I heard from an Italian publisher who said, the Dalai Lama's on page 52, and you're on page 106. And I was like, this was the most incredible thing ever. And I called up everybody I could think of, and I thought, I want to write more. And I wasn't like, again, I had no credentials at all. I just told a story. And so this publication was really exciting for me. And so what I ended up doing, I eventually fell into contact with a travel editor. And I said, I want to write for you. And he goes, I don't need you. And I said, I understand that, but one day you'll be in a bind. And if you are, please think of me. And he said, but I'm not going to think of you because I have a million people who want to write for me. And I just don't need you. Do you have a bunch of credits? No. But if you're in a bind, please think of me. And he said, no. And he kept saying no. And eventually he called me up like a month later and said, hey, listen, I'm in a bind. And I thought of you. So can you be on a plane to Mexico in 2 days? And do you have a valid passport? And will you write me an article? And I said, how much will it cost me? And he chuckled. And he said, yeah, don't worry about it. It'll be taken care of. And that hotel that I eventually went to, like I got on the plane, like the ticket was just sent to me. I didn't have to do a thing. This ticket was sent to me. I got on the plane at the gate. And matter of fact, before I left, I said, well, how do I get to this place? And they're like, don't worry, that's all been taken care of. And so when I landed, I walked out in front and there was a guy waiting for me with like the 3-star hat, like a general or a chauffeur is wearing. And he had my name on a board. And I didn't know what to do, but I guess I was supposed to follow that guy. And I drove with him out into Mexico. It was sort of like outside of Cancun in the, I think it's Playa del Carmen area, just outside of that. And it's sort of almost very jungle-ish thing, this beautiful 5-star resort. And I had the rucksack with the patches on it. And I walked to the thing, like still not even sure like what's actually happening. And I said, hi, at registration, my name's Devin Galladay. I think I'm supposed to be here. And literally this woman looked it up and she goes, oh, Mr. Devin. And people lined up across from me. And I mean, literally, like one guy handed me a fruity drink. Another person gave me like a chilled towel. And everybody like gave me a lei of flowers. And at the end of the line was the assistant manager of the hotel who said, he literally put his arm around me and walked me off to the side of the room. And he said, Mr. Galladay, anything you want. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I want all the lyrics to Cuando Caliente the Sol, and I want a rucksack, a patch for my rucksack that says Mexico on it. And he looked at me like, really? And I said, yeah. And he goes, oh, well, that's easy. And before I left, I had a spectacular time, had some of the best food I had ever eaten in my life, incredible accommodations. And I had a patch for my rucksack that said Mexico, actually 2 of them. And I had all the lyrics to Cuando Caliente the Sol. It was an incredible experience. And that was just the beginning. I still write for that magazine occasionally. I don't do that much. I mean, yes, I'm the editor-in-chief of In the Know Traveler, but I mostly pick stories that I find great. I have people who help me with that. I'm incredibly blessed, and I travel a lot for free. So here's the thing. The number one tip I'm going to give you, Veronica, hopefully we'll catch up, but yes, there is going to be a thing. Just stick with us, and you haven't missed anything important or super important other than me telling you some stories. All right, so tip number 1 is that the tourism board is sort of like part of a system. Think of it this way, that there are a whole lot of different marketing branches that include CVBs. CVB stands for Convention and Visitors Bureau. Most every tourism board is connected to a town or a city or to attractions or destinations or hotel, and all of these things. So there's tourism boards and there's marketing branches for all of the things. Like if you were to go to the Grand Canyon, I guarantee you there is a Grand Canyon person that invites people from around the world to come visit the Grand Canyon, because the Grand Canyon, as iconic as it is competing with every destination around Arizona, around the United States, and around the world. So the important thing to understand is that this is going to take a little bit of work, not an incredible amount of work, but it's going to take a little bit of effort on your part. This is like, my wife is in this industry of sort of like digital marketing, and a lot of people make claims that are just like, it's not true. So I'm not going to suggest to you that you're just going to sit back and stuff is going to fall from the sky and take you everywhere. It's going to require a little bit of effort on your part, but we're not talking hours a day. We're talking about like an hour here and there, and mostly a willing to reach yourself out into the world. It's really not going to be a big deal, I promise you, and the dividends are ridiculous. Okay, so we've covered that, and so how does this all work? So when I talk about the tourism boards, like if you were to type as an example, you could do it right now into Google. Here's your greatest resource of all time. You type in Mexican Tourism Board or Mexico Tourism Board, there's going to be an answer. And that's going to be the official site of the Mexican Tourism Board. And they're going to give you all kinds of information of places to go and festivals to see and pictures that will inspire you as a traveler to go to Mexico. So they're a government entity, and there's only so much they can do when they're constantly trying to develop sort of like a product. That's the way they would describe it, a product of Mexico. So that Mexican Tourism Board, they're also going to work in concert with Cancun and Playa del Carmen and like 800 other cities, because in Mexico, as an example, they have something like 60, what is it called? The Pueblos Mágicos, which is the magical towns that UNESCO has identified and Mexico has identified as being like a historic, beautiful town worthy of your tourism dollar. So there's these little towns all over Mexico. Every major city has some sort of a convention and visitors bureau. Most small historic towns are going to have some sort of a marketing department that wants to help promote their little destination. Sedona, New Mexico. I mean, pretty much every place that you can think of is going to be promoting their little destination or their big destination, because again, everybody's competing for dollars. So while they are putting together their videos and their brochures and speaking to people just like you and me who just want to travel, they also need help. And what's that help look like? The help primarily comes from, as an example, Mexico is great for putting out information in Spanish to its own citizenry, because that's going to be on the top of their list as a travel destination. Well, what about the United States? Well, they may hire a they may hire a PR firm. The public relations firm, their main job is to basically disseminate information from a foreign destination or help get even more promotion going with the help of journalists. Why do they do that? Why can't the PR firms write articles on behalf of Mexico and put them out? Well, they do. They're called press releases. They're news information. The problem with the press releases is that when you're dealing with PR firms, you're dealing with large sort of corporate entities, and they have to be very careful about the way they use words and images and concepts and ideas. Their job is to make sure, as an example, Mexico looks as fantastic as possible and as wonderful as possible. The problem is that the language they tend to use tends to kind of fall in line with sort of like more of a corporate entity. The Tourism Board of Mexico, they also put out stories and things as well, but again, they're coming from a place of, we are a governmental organization. So they have certain restrictions. And we, who have been constantly marketed to as people, are always looking for voices that will not sound like a corporation and will not sound like a government organization. Enter in journalists. Journalists have integrity, and journalists have a voice, and the implication is that they've done some research to find out about their products and services before they write an article, and this is largely true. Moreover, you now have something that's happening called bloggers. And bloggers are just people who don't have any necessary credentials, but they sound like you and I. We read bloggers not necessarily because you're going to get the most genius, eloquent information. What you're going to likely get is accurate information that is more likely going to sound like a friend talking to a friend than something else. So how did the tourism boards kind of like find people who are going to write and talk about them and provide value for them? They find bloggers. Does that mean you have to be a blogger? No, because what you will find is that there are bloggers that have their own websites. There are also bloggers who are on the Huffington Post or other websites or many websites that are all offering some value to, let's say, Mexico or Sweden or Switzerland or pretty much every single country on earth. Like Burundi, I've had lunch with the Burundi Tourism Department, which is basically this one woman. And I'm not even sure if she has emails, but she was very, very nice. So the important thing that I want you to understand is that the tourism boards actually need you. And so how do they provide service to you? Well, if you go to their destination and you call them up and you need a free hotel room, or you in exchange for an article or something else, you're probably going to get one as long as you can prove yourself to be a reasonable human being. Pretty cool. And I've done that all. There's also things called press trips, and press trips are items that they're basically like somewhere between 3 days and 2 weeks to some destination around the world where they will fly you out, they will pay for everything, and the idea is that you will present some kind of value that they deem to be relevant. So when you get started, mostly what I'm going to have you do, what I'm going to suggest to you, is that you can contact the Mexican Tourism Board. You can contact anybody that is in tourism. And by the way, hotels have their own marketing departments, and they give you free night stay. I mean, I've called up hotels and said, hey, this is Devin Galladay. I need a room for the night. I'm going to accomplish X, Y, and Z for you. What do you think? The answer is going to be yay or nay. Sometimes it's nay. Sometimes they're fully booked. Sometimes it's like, oh, no, absolutely, we'd love to do that for you. And matter of fact, how about dinner on us in our fine dining restaurant? So all this stuff is happening. Like when you go to a hotel, there's probably a writer, if not multiple writers in there at any given point in time, trying to provide this value. So before you get in contact and before you contact these tourism boards, like you can do it right now, but like hear me out and hang out with us. So here we go. So tip number 2, know exactly what you want. Don't contact these folks with just the idea of, I just want some stuff, but anything you have, I'm just going to take. Never do that. What you're doing is you're calling with a presentation of the value that you're going to be able to offer them. So yes, you can call them, know exactly what you want from them. And remember, the more that you are going to ask from them, the more value you are likely to give them. Think of it as more or less a trade that you'll be doing, but they always have the short end of the stick, because it's very seldom, that a tourism board is going to say, I want you to write 45 articles. That's never going to happen. In all likelihood, they're going to want a couple good articles on a couple good sites or a couple of good magazines, and that's the extent of it. I will also, it's further on, but there are things that you can do to write fast and quick articles and turn them out pretty quickly. So it's very little in terms of time. It's not that much work in the actual content creation that you'll be making. Let's see. David says, I blog 4 sites basically centered on golf. I'm having difficulty gaining credibility with some of the organizations because I get so many requests. How can I get through this? That's a bigger question. So I'm going to save that a little bit towards the end, David. But again, it's going to come down to value. they have to perceive the value. And the important thing to understand is if you say, I blog for 4 sites, they're not going to necessarily care. If you say, I blog for 4 sites and here's the traffic they get and here's the kind of clientele that is their readership, then it's going to perk their interest. If you call up a fancy hotel that has a golf course, you're much more likely, when you have sort of like your ducks in a row and you're very clear on what kind of value you're going to be offering them, that is going to go a long way in getting them interested in you. Is calling best or email? I'm not sure if I understand that follow-up question, David. So what do these tourism folks want? Well, they want promotion. They want promotion. They want the ability to have trust in you, and that the value you're going to be offering is going to be meaningful to them. That can range all over the place. Like, I guarantee you the Mexican Tourism Board, who's a big giant company that has the ability to send you pretty much anywhere in Mexico, they are also going to be a little bit harder to get in contact with, because there's going to be more requests made of them, and you're more likely dealing and competing against television shows and things like that. But the boards, the regional ones, the cities, the states, are going to be much more easy to deal with. When you contact to set up a visit, basically what you want to do is I would start through the website. And literally look for the contact information, and you're going to want to talk. We're going to get into this in a couple minutes, but we're going to talk about developing an elevator pitch and defining the value that you have in a message that is going to turn them on. In other words, you have to ask yourself that if you are talking to somebody who has the ability to send you on a trip, and you write them something to the effect of, and you could go on Twitter all day long and all over Facebook, and it'll show a bright smiling person or a cute couple, and they'll say, have camera, will travel. This is not going to be useful at all. What you want to do is define what your value is for them, so they can look at it and go, oh, that's a good thing, we love that. Or no, it's not quite right. So you want to start developing of message that what you want to receive. And here's the thing that I want you to understand from a psychological point of view. The tourism boards are basically a governmental agency. They get tons and tons of requests from people all the time. Sometimes people are like, have camera, will travel, send me on a trip, I want a trip. And those people have to, they have to somehow convince the tourism boards, and the tourism boards are like, have camera, will travel, who cares? They're not going to say that to you, but that's really going to be their position. So they're always looking for this value. So understand 2 things. The psychological element is this. A lot of the people at the top of the pyramid are politicians. That's the truth. You're going to have less access to those, and those people are going to have the most power, so to speak. It's a very political position. On the bottom of the pyramid are the people who work at the PR firms and who are going to work with the media. And surprisingly, you think, well, but the media is big and it's really important. You would be surprised who the people that you are largely going to work with, whether it be a tourism board, whether it is going to be a PR firm, the vast majority of the people that you will be dealing with are going to be women who are somewhere between 25 and 27 years old. And they're these young, very capable, very smart young women, but those are the decision makers that you are largely going to be interacting with, and that's like a no joke kind of thing. So you have to, understand they are probably going to be very savvy overall in working in their environment and have a good idea of what kind of people they will want to send on trips, but they're not necessarily the most worldly people that you are going to know. So understand this. You're going to be dealing, in many cases, younger people. And so the next thing that you want to understand is that we're dealing with sort of like the next major tip that I want to give you is know exactly what it is that you are going to offer them. They're not going to figure it out for you. So when you contact them, you're not going to merely just want to say, give me a trip. You want to get some clarity so it sounds like you know what's going on. So remember, we started with know what it is that you're offering first. So when you offer something first, make it about the value that you can provide. And then when you ask for something, be really specific and clear. As an example, if you want to go on a trip, like for Santa Fe, who I'm dealing with right now, here's what I said to them. I said, I can guarantee you articles in The Know Traveler and in The Know Bride, and I can likely get you an article in a particular magazine. That's going to depend on the editor. In other words, I will pitch them, I will talk to them, and I will communicate with them. But if they say no, or better, something comes up, that's kind of the way it goes. That's the truth. So let's see, does this sound feasible? Hold on, I've got a question from, would I have to already have a blog set up? No. A matter of fact, the very first assignment that I got on that was purely on my own was a conversation I had with the Philippines. I just happened to be placed at a luncheon, and I was sitting next to the woman from the Philippines. And she said to me, she goes, oh, so what do you do? And I said, well, I have a website. And I didn't have a website. The website was like forthcoming, and I told her that. And I said, the website should be done in about a month. She goes, well, you know, if you can get that website up next week, I will send you to the Philippines. Do you want to go to the Philippines and eat balut? And the answer was, yeah, totally. And then I called up the guy who was designing the website. And remember, this was like years ago. This was like 13 years ago. And his response was, well, I can maybe get it done in 6 months. And I said, no, you just have to put up whatever you have like in 3 days. And so he threw up a terrible website. He threw up an awful website. But the point is that I had created a relationship. We're going to talk more about that in a second with this woman from the Philippines. I didn't ask for anything. We developed a short little relationship. And yes, she ended up sending me to the Philippines for 2 weeks. I had a fantastic time. Let's see. I'm a well-established film industry professional, and I'm starting a new blog called World, which is going to focus on filming opportunities, film festivals, and film-related opportunities around the globe. I definitely want to connect with film boards as well. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see, and she goes on to say, if filmmakers take their film production to a location, it has tremendous financial impact on the local economy, and I will be writing about the locations and other things Hollywood-related that are available. I think that's a great idea, Tanya. Matter of fact, I was actually a location scout. Before this incarnation, I did locations for film and television. So does it sound feasible? Yeah, totally. There's huge amounts of money. Remember, it all comes down to the value that you have the ability to provide. What you just wrote me here is something would get you a call back from some media person within the tourism boards or the CVBs or wherever it is that you might be focusing on. So I think that's a great idea, Tanya. Okay, so how are we doing so far? Are you guys getting some information that is going to be useful for you moving forward? I hope so. As a matter of fact, let's see, what I was going to say is while I'm considering that, I want you to think about going back to the ladies in their early 20s. I want you to think about, and this is just in general, what kind of value are they looking for? And we talked about this a little bit earlier. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of value that are going to be useful. For starters, your audience that you've built. This might be your website, this might be your podcast, this might be your radio show or your video cast that might be on YouTube. It means that you have developed enough of an audience that will make it useful to some tourism board. This could also mean the audience of somebody else. I would say that I don't write a lot for myself anymore. I have a website where a lot of other people write for me, and I help them get what's called, ready? Letter of assignment. It's a great 3-letter phrase that you need to understand within the travel world, that if you are, let's say as an example, you write some tourism board, you don't want to write an article, you don't have a blog, but you would like to still provide value for this tourism board, then literally you can go to somebody and say, hey, I need a letter of assignment. I'm going to guarantee you an article about this great topic from this great place. And they're either going to say yes or no. Good, Maria, I'm glad that this is working out for you. So other things that you should want to take into consideration is your professionalism. That means you're showing up to work it out and do business. So if you're showing up in holy shoes and holy things, like I said, you're going to be dealing with political entities within the tourism boards. So they're not going to send over a schmo to shake hands with the president. So that means when you go to live events, you are looking like fantastic ladies and gentlemen. And I do that because it gives you credibility when you show up. Other things is going to be convenience. If they see you over and over again, that means they know who you are. They begin to trust you just by seeing you. If you love a particular destination, enthusiasm goes a long way. In other words, if you reach out to, let's say, the tourism board of British Columbia, as an example, you say, oh, I love British Columbia, and you are in regular contact with them, and they know that you have a passion for their destination, don't be surprised if they send you on a trip based solely on that. I know a guy who spent 3 weeks in Switzerland with nothing. Because remember, these tourism boards have budgets. These PR firms have budgets, and they have to fill trips. They have to. And sometimes, like, I thought I wasn't going to get a trip to just recently on a destination. I feel like I didn't respond in time, so I thought it wasn't even happening. And so they wrote me back and said, we still have space. Please come. Like, this was like just a few days before the trip. And I was like, okay, great. So took a great trip that way. So the other thing is proven reliability. These are important things. So how do you find these people? Remember, you start with Google by looking up the tourism board. So like if you were to say Spain tourism, you're going to find them. Spain tourism in the United States, you're going to find contacts. This, again, every major country is going to have something. All the major cities are going to, and many historical sites as well. Moreover, I want you to start focusing on something to move forward, to get something called an elevator pitch down. An elevator pitch is a 15, 20-second thing that when you meet somebody face to face, where you've got like 15 or 20 seconds to impress somebody so they know who you are, you have something that you're going to say that is going to lead with your value. And basically what it comes down to this is, here's my elevator pitch. My name is Devin Galladay. I'm the editor-in-chief of In the Know Traveler and a number of their travel sites. We cover 186 countries worldwide. We've been around for 12 years, and we have over 5,000 articles about every corner of the world. Pleased to meet you. So they already know something about me. And I may even, if they're still sort of like standing there with their arms crossed before them, I might go ahead and say, well, here are the statistics, here's our demographics, and here's other information that would be useful to you. And if I were to go even further, I might say, well, I have written a number of articles for the Huffington Post, and I would list off some magazines. Some of their demographics are, if they don't know who the Huffington Post are, I could say they are one of the top 100 websites in the world. And so all of that information combined will help lift you up. I know some of you right now are saying, oh, but I don't have that elevator pitch. The point is that you will learn how to develop a message. And it's going to be a little bit of trial and error, but I promise you, you can do it. And my elevator pitch in the beginning was not all that great. I don't even know if it's all that great now, but I've been around and taken a lot of trips, so I know something as simple as what I've said is workable. So let's see, we've got that. We've talked about our elevator pitch. And by the way, the fun part about all of this is that I have traveled the world by getting married. That's a whole new thing. I want to talk about that just for 2 seconds, because here's what ended up happening. Because if you're saying to yourself, well, but I have to be focusing on the travel industry, I'm telling you, you absolutely don't. Just as I was telling Tanya a minute ago, this isn't necessarily about the travel industry. Again, it comes down to value. So what had happened was, and this was, my wife and I got married a few years back, and one of the things that we had come up with was that I wanted to marry her 100 times in 100 countries. And this was purely a personal choice. It was something that I really wanted her to feel excited, enthusiasm, and feel love. And I thought if I kept saying my vows to her and over again, that she would feel confident and loved. So it's a personal thing. And so when we went traveling, I said, hey, by the way, I'm coming to this area. I'm traveling with my wife, but we're going to film ourselves getting married. Do you know a Hobo and a Shady Glen where we could get married? And for the most part, they said, no, we don't have hobos here. Or, Shady Glen, what's a Shady Glen? So what I would do is, I'd say these things, but we're getting married, we're going to film it, and we're going to promote it. And some of those folks said, oh, yeah, no, there's a Shady Glen over here. But a lot of them said, a shocking number of them said, we can do better. And so we got married in castles. I was in San Marino, where we were married in front of literally 200 Korean tourists in the main castle in San Marino. And it was a recreation of a Latin Vulgare ceremony from the 1400s, and everybody, including us, were dressed in 1400s recreated costumes. And at the end of it, I was knighted, and they brought along 2 cameras and filmed it all for us. It was an incredible event. So not only that kind of launched us into in the no bride phase, and that doesn't have a huge population, but I hear from the tourism industry and the bridal industry all the time. And I mean, like Vera Wang, if I needed to, we could probably get a Vera Wang dress for my wife. Maybe that's too expensive, but I think hopefully you're getting my point that this offers all kinds of things. And by the way, this isn't just me. I have done this with numerous writers based on the In the Know Traveler credibility, where people get, sent around the world. As a matter of fact, I sent one guy on a trip as a thank you, because he had written me a bunch of articles. As a thank you, I sent him to Jordan. And so they took him to the seat of civilization at Jerash. They took him to one of the 7 wonders of the world at Petra. They put him on camels. They took him on safari in the desert. And while he was there, he met the woman who does Egypt. And she goes, you come to Jordan, but you don't come to Egypt? So all of a sudden she sent him to Egypt. And she took him along the Nile, and they stuck him in the inside of the pyramids. And so, who knows where these kinds of things leads. And this was a guy who had no blog and no particular credentials and no experience and no anything. But he did this for me. And he wrote a few stories, and he traveled a lot, and he made some great contacts. As a matter of fact, I think he went to Egypt twice. So these things are important to know. So my point is that some of you right now are going, well, I don't know, is this something that's possible? I'm telling you, absolutely it's possible. Hi, Carol. It's absolutely possible, but it is going to, as I said before, it's going to require a little bit of work. What were some of the things that we talked about really quickly? We're going to be talking about leverage. We're going to be talking about that, yes, this requires a little bit of work. You want to know exactly what it is that you're going to be asking for. You're going to want to know what it is that you can offer, and the kinds of value. Whoops, I think, oh, right. I forgot this card. Like I said, I'm not, I'm just this guy who's having fun traveling the world. So I almost forgot to talk about this. When we talk about value, is that even if you don't have some incredible valuable thing right now, if you follow through with the thing that you plan to do and you do it, check this out. Perceived value becomes real when delivered. Honestly, all you have to do is do a little bit of the work, and you'll be amazed how far you get. So we're almost done. I'm going to answer some questions in a couple minutes. I'm going to tell you about how to get your airline ticket. but I have put together, because there's going to be some people who have a lot of questions, and my wife was like, no, you have to put together a program. And I did put together something that will help people even advance this forward a little bit more and get you more secure, because you have the basic fundamentals where you can go, like if you take the tips that I just gave you and you go out and do something, you're probably going to have some success. It's going to be a little bit more work, but if you want to work a little bit less and you're into the idea, I want to tell you about a program that I put together that I think you are going to totally dig. And a matter of fact, on top of all that, even if you don't like totally not into it, I'm going to give you additional tips, so hang out. This is going to be totally fun. So first off, tell me in one word, one thing that you are, that you've gotten from this experience so far. It would be great. Just type it in this little bar down in the corner. Look, for me, it's this opposite side, so it's that side. But type in just one word so I know that's going on, that we're on the same page, and that we are working on this together. Okay, so we talked about, first off, why would I do something like this? I think the chief element here is that I'm doing this because I want good people to be in the travel industry, because right now we have too many bloggers that are not living up to the promises that they should be delivering, and it's kind of playing with the industry. So I want you to kind of really connect with the idea that providing a little value and doing what you say you're going to do is going to go a long way, and it's going to put you above the curve for everybody. So I got good inspiration, possibilities, connection, leverage, freedom, concrete first steps. Well done, Allison, multiple words. Implementation and value. Good. I'm so glad that you are all on the same thing. So the first thing I want to talk about is that I put together this program. I've already done a beta version of it. It went exceptionally well. Some people have already gotten some free trips out of it, but they did put in a little bit of work, and it's called the Travel for Free Accelerator. It is totally kind of cool. And basically what I did is I put together a 4-week program that has 3 modules. I'm going to tell you about those in a minute. It's 4 weeks plus a fantastic live Q&A. Do you mind if I tell you a little bit more about it? Just do it. Good, Elise. Enlightened. Reconfirmation. Good. Opening up new possibilities. I'm glad all this stuff is sinking in, because it's really very, very cool. All right. So this is going to apply whether or not you want to be a professional travel blogger, whether or not you've already done some blogging, or you have your own website and you want to start maximizing your ability to communicate with travel professionals, or whether you just want to do this in a hobby once in a while. So the once in a while sort of thing it's all going to come down to the same stuff. If you provide value, they're not going to care about some sort of long history of credentials. What they're going to care about is that you provide value. So I'm going to help maximize your value, and I'm going to do that with 3 modules. And again, this is all about, like, if you have a business, and it's parallel stuff too. It's, again, you don't have to be within the travel industry. You just have to figure out a way to provide value, whatever context that may be. So if you want to do retreats, all of a sudden you have value. If you're going to be bringing people and stick them in hotel rooms in your destination, that destination should be able to help you. And all you have to do is come up with the right messaging that will help provide that conduit for you, so when you reach out and you have something to offer them, they're going to be happy to see you. So this is, again, all about the great food, all the great stuff. This is a billion-dollar industry. So module 1 is about developing relationships. It's about reaching out and understanding that this billion-dollar industry, which is going to be the tourism boards, the CVBs, the PR firms, as well as editors. And the good news is I've really kind of cracked this code. So when we get started, by the way, you don't want to be a blogger. You don't want to call yourself a blogger. I don't. I have always been, I was a blogger for a week, and then I immediately became an online travel magazine as quickly as possible. I also became editor as quickly as possible. Now, when I started out, did I know as much as I do now? No, but I learned, I learned by trial and error and by fire. And so you don't have to do this stuff. I would definitely go with it. So let's see. So how did Morgana get a round trip business class ticket to Bali for $85? Promise you we're definitely getting to that, Elisa. We'll get to that in just a few moments. So module 1, is going to be about developing relationships without selling yourself. I'm also going to include some bonuses, because here's the thing. When you reach out to somebody and you start asking for stuff right off the get-go without developing a relationship, it's going to get to be a messy and they're not going to trust you. So here's my bonus tip number one. Bonus tip number one is don't ask for trips without developing a relationship. I see when people do it after meeting somebody for 5 minutes. It's gross. It doesn't work like 99% of the time. And so module one is what I'm going to be giving you is my actual letter templates. In other words, I'm going to be providing you letters that I write to tourism boards as an introduction and how to further along conversations so I can get into a place where we're communicating about the things that ultimately they want to give me, because they want me to travel and they want me to write articles and they want me to put in videos or photography and whatever else it is that they need. So remember, you never start by asking for trips right off the bat. It doesn't work. So module two, because once the door is open, you're going to want to have some sort of measure of street cred. And the street cred is, okay, I have written some articles, I've written some videos, I've done the kinds of things that I need to do in order to make stuff really happen. So that means when you've opened the door, you want to, as I've talked about a little bit earlier, you want to showcase your value early. You want to prove that you want to help. So it's going to be about what can you do, and there's a wide spectrum of things. And so this particular class is going to offer you sort of like two sets of things. It's going to offer you a whole variety of different content creation tips, specifically about writing travel articles if you want to do that. If you don't want to write articles, but you want to create content, I have article templates in a variety of them where you can create create articles really fast and really easy. And not only that, in that same module, I'm going to be offering you search engine optimization tips, as well as social media tips. In other words, things that are going to help drive traffic to your articles in particular, even if your website isn't doing particularly great, but your article is. And it doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to go viral. You don't even have to worry about that kind of thing. What you want to do is bring it sort of like a level up and make it look good. So when the tourism boards see you, you already have a web page that looks like it kicks some butt. So that's important. So deliver your value early. Let's see, module 3 is about getting invited back. And this is more about the long term. It's about, and it's a lot of it's going to be sort of like out of the box thinking. And it's going to be a lot about providing value above and beyond what their expectation is. And there's a whole slew of different little tips and tricks that I've learned over the years that will help you do that. And so bonus tip number 3 is about over-delivering on your promises. The thing is that there's a saying in this industry that if you are not, if you don't know who the idiot is on the press trip, it's probably you. So I'm going to teach you how not to do that, because bad news travels fast. So you're going to get some article templates, also going to get my Travel Rockstar checklist, and we also are going to do a 90-minute Q&A. Matter of fact, I've written, I think it's 10 ebooks for this course that went over really, really well. One of them was, and it's absolutely worth it just by itself, is that I did some interviews with the top PR firm executives who tell you exactly what they're looking for and key things to say and do in order to get recognized by the PR firms. I interviewed a couple of the national tourism organizations, the tourism offices, and spoke to their executives. Finally, I had interviewed a travel magazine editor who tells you exactly how you should be working with a magazine editor when you get that way. So gotta leave. Anthony, will you let us know the cost of the course? Yeah, matter of fact, what I'm gonna do right now is I'm going to give you a link. Give me 1 second. And here's my offer. I basically have it's about $2,000 worth of value. I actually think it's probably more, because once you get one trip, this is going to be like 10 times the cost of whatever you're going to do. So for this trip, or pardon me, for this package, the 10 things is $200 flat price. Really good. Check the I'm Ready link that I think is under offers. I hope that showed up clearly for you. And check it out. I'm also willing to help you however it is that I can. And so, as a matter of fact, by the way, I had gone on a trip to England one time where it was literally, they said, well, we want you to come out to a trip to England for 3 days to Birmingham to go to an event. And I said, that's ridiculous. And they said, well, what about a week? So I said, okay. So once I was out in England for a week, and this is where they took me to Romeo and Juliet in the Round at the Shakespearean Company, done by the Royal Shakespearean Theatre. They took me to the Wizard of Oz, the Andrew Lloyd Webber version of this at the Palladium, third row center. And then after the end of that trip, they were like, at the end of this trip, they were like, why don't we take you to Scotland? Because we had a space open up, which I went for. And then after that, they said, why don't you go check out Wales? Because we have another thing coming up. So I was gone for almost a month on their dime. And I mean, that trip probably cost $25,000, $30,000. Anyway, incredible stuff. So we're talking about a total of $200. And also, if you are one of the top 10 people to sign up, I'm going to give you a 20-minute one-on-one with me to help you get motivated and moving forward. And that's going to be for the first 10 people who sign up. And finally, how did Morgana do it? I have this thing. I'm hoping I can reach it. Hold on. Let me see if I can see it. Shoot. Okay. So I get them almost every day. And if you are like me, you get them too. You probably get information from Chase or Citibank or American Express offering you points. The way these credit cards work, as a matter of fact, I'm going to read you something right off of the Chase Sapphire Preferred card right now. 50,000 bonus points after you spend $4,000 on your first 3 months of opening an account. So what that means is you can take those points and you can transfer them to, I think for Chase Sapphire, you can transfer them almost anywhere, but I use them primarily at United. And what you want to do is create accounts for Delta, for United Airways, and for American Airlines. And then what I do is I get credit cards. And by the way, this is not something I recommend as from like if you have terrible credit or you can't afford whatever terms and conditions are, but this is what I do. I get, matter of fact, I have this Chase Sapphire Preferred card. You can look it up. It's actually, I think, a really good card, but they give you 50,000 points. Those points can be converted to hotel stays, but I use them specifically for long-term airfare. So as an example, if I go to United and I want to go to South America, I will pay for that by frequent flyer miles. And I can convert these Chase Sapphire points into 50,000 frequent flyer miles. And they usually, if you spend like another 5,000 or in a certain amount of range, or you sign somebody up, they might give you another 5,000 or 10,000. The way I have historically used these cards is if I get my cards out 6 months in advance, those miles that are mine, it usually is 20,000 frequent flyer points or miles per leg. So that means with a 50,000 mile card, I can go pretty much anywhere in the world for about 40,000 frequent flyer miles. The Chase Sapphire Preferred card also, as an example, has a business version of it. So when I will apply for the Chase Sapphire card, I will get the 50,000 because I'll spend $4,000 just on regular expenses during the course of a few months. Then what I will do is I will get the business card to get the additional 50. And sometimes I will also get multitudes of cards. And then at the end of 1 year, or before the end of the 1 year, I will get rid of the card. So I have great credit. It's never really affected my credit in any particular way. Another tip that what I will frequently do is I will pay, let's say if I owe them $100, I will pay them $103 because that helps elevate my credit score. So that's what I do. And by the way, this is something called travel hacking. And there's lots of things that you can look up for it, but because we have a limited amount of time, I don't want to kill you. Let's see, Tanya, forget the course. I don't like them. How much is a one-on-one with you? I actually do have a one-on-one course. I don't think I can give you a link to it, but you can, matter of fact, I'm going to give you my email address and I will send you a link for sort of like the one-on-one thing if that's something that you are into. Give me a second. I'm going to type in my direct email address. Okay, so there you go. And on top of all that, and this is just as an aside thing, if you do need additional hand-holding, the one-on-one course, which is, by the way, is $500, will get you started in the right direction. On top of all of that, you know, when I started this, I didn't know anything about websites. Now I know everything about websites. And for Digital Marketer, I am certified in a variety of their courses. You can find out more about that on my LinkedIn page. But for now, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at dg@intheknowtraveler.com. And I've plugged it in over here. And if you have any other questions, I'd love to hear from you. And again, our top 10 are going to get a 20-minute one-on-one with me to get you started. And if there's, I'd love to hear from you. And if nothing else, you've got some great information to move forward right now. And if you need a little bit more help and want to cut through some of the red tape, definitely take me up on our the Travel for Free Accelerator program for $200. Is probably going to be the best steal you're ever going to get. Andrea, thank you so much for being here. Elisa, thank you so much for being here. Tanya, Anthony, Veronica, Maria, Allison, thank you all so much for being here. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on the other side, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much. Enjoy.